So this is what we have so far with the final gather on. The HDR image that is helping the shadow area. So it's like the fill light, and then the spotlight from here, from the. I'm gonna push this a little bit back so we don't see it. You can still actually. Let me push it back and maybe scale it. But you can also make this disappear, like in the rendering. So you can go basically to render stats. Anytime you go to the render stats, it says what each object, how does it appear in the rendering. So does it cast shadow? Does it receive? It does cast shadows. That's what we want. We don't want it to be visible. So if I go back to my bookmark, this little corner here is not going to be visible. So let's look at that. Let's just review it. There is so now I just made it invisible. Okay, let me undo that render. I'm gonna create a chrome material for this guy, so I'm just gonna go assign new material. Here, preset chrome, replace. That's fine. I can actually paint the chrome if I wanted to a different color. And then I'm gonna render this so we can see it with the same quality and the same settings and without color management. Let's look at this, how it comes out. I'm going to drop the resolution because it takes a little bit longer to render to 25% so I can see a quick result. So that's the normal render. If I turn on the, if I go ahead and use this setting here, which is called apply color management, and we need to say, well, apply sRGB gamma, so make that friendly for all user screens. And if we just look at the render area here, it also has sRGB gamma. So if we render that, it will actually blast a lot of light, but we see it here as this, like that. If you go to raw, this is how we're gonna see it after we do this. This is the sRGB gamma. So actually now we have like a better image. If I save this, just so you guys can see as a PSD file as a test, notice that in Photoshop, if I open it, it's not like Maya, right? So it looks like that here, but we get less. So there's some settings that we can actually do here. So we can start with. So all these, we're gonna look at them like later on how we can use all these to kind of get what we want in terms of the render. But for now, if you want to review it in inside the rendering area, you just have to go and press raw. Now the last thing I want to do is to do some occlusion maps. So basically what I have is, this is almost done. I'm just going to go ahead and select my sphere in the background and add a little bit more gain. And the last thing would be, oh yeah, the light, which is here. Let me scale that. So the light has ray traced shadows. Now if I start increasing the light radius, the shadows are going to start blurring out. So I'm going to go and say 1. And I'll go back to my bookmark. And let's look at that. So now I'm getting a blurrier kind of outline. The problem that we have is that we get a lot of noise with this. So we get a lot of noisy area. So what we need to increase the shadow rays. I'm going to increase them to 15 and see if that works. I'm going to go only on a certain area and just render that as a render region. That's much better, right? Okay, so now we're good. We just need to render this image. We have the Gobo object working. So you can see the Gobo object in the reflections here. That's not what I want. Visible in the reflection. And we can also see how it's touching the ground. So I can select that object and say don't be seen either in reflect. Actually, no, we need it in the reflections because it's here. But let's see if maybe it's better if we don't see it in the reflection here. So not visible in reflections and do not cast shadows. Let's see how that comes out. No, not cast shadows, not receive shadows. Sorry. Let's see. Cast shadows. Let's see that. What did I do? I made this. So visible in reflections, but also it's visible in the refraction, of course, because it's like sort of distorted here. Now it's taking a long time to calculate the shadow. That's the problem. So let's also click off this piece and let's see how that comes out. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and just finalize this image. So we want to go and so we have the blurry shadows and everything. So I think I just need to turn on the color management is on. The image size is 1080, 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to go on in my rendering, save this, and just render the final image. So that will take some time. So that could be like a setup with the window that you guys are working. You have a window. You're probably going to have a real window because you're going to see it. So there's going to be shadows that are coming in. But if you wanted to have like a tree and you don't want to have a model of a tree, and you don't want to. So then you can create a bunch of branches that are already like cut out, and you can put them in front of the light, and they will. So all these branches and all these like, I don't know, whatever plants are gonna just be casting shadows in you. The flame, the flame, the flame could be. You would need to do some dynamic simulation for the flame, but there are tutorials with like just light. Yeah. The flame though is like a sort of dynamic. You could do like you could create the light from the flame, and then you do the post production on the flame in Photoshop, because we're not going to do any dynamic simulation. But if you really want to include it, then you're just going to try to simulate how it would be, lighting up the scene. So you can see that the quality is really nice now once you res, and we're getting the nice, even like the color management actually gives a lot of nice kind of flat, more flat shades rather than contrast. Because if you don't use color management, Maya will render something with extreme contrast. So then you have to, and you can't really take it back, because once you have a lot of contrast, your image is baked. Is there a socket? Okay. Just gonna turn off this computer. Still rendering, huh? No, if you don't use 2016 and you're using 2015, you can't do the color management. You have to go through a whole process, and I'm not gonna show you that, because again, you're eventually everybody's gonna use 2016 from now on, and then that could be forgotten. So it doesn't really make any sense. It will take you a lot of time. So don't use the color management feature at all. Just do everything like I did, and then the color management, let's use it if you have 2016. Just turn on the color management and say sRGB, and then go to the rendering and say sRGB2, so you have that linked, and you're gonna get the image for Photoshop for post-production ready. So this is how I want to see the image in Photoshop, but the rendering here is gonna actually add more light, because Maya doesn't have an sRGB layout on the render. So you can see that the calculation is mostly on the shadow. takes a long time to calculate the shadow. Just because I blurred it. And there's many, I mean, imagine having like a branch with a lot of leaves, that would take way longer. If you make it, I mean, I blurred it a lot and I added a lot of sampling, so that makes the calculation. Oh, what? I'm gonna stop the video here because it's taking way too long, and then I'm gonna